next thing we're going to talk about is, I think, absolutely fascinating, and I'm really grateful to Seán in particular for joining us this morning, but with the facilitator of a group which Seán takes part in, and that's Charles Brand, who's a psychologist. It's all about hearing voices, and Charles, I'm fascinated by this. People like me kind of attempt to say, well, I suppose we all hear voices to some extent, but we're talking about something very particular in this case.
Yes, we're talking about, I suppose, when we're talking about two things. Voice hearing, I mean, when voices or hearing voices can become problematic for people and interfere in their occupation, their social and their functioning. That's when it becomes a problem. I suppose just to point out, there are plenty of people, between 2 and 6% of the general population hear voices. Only a small minority of those people go on to get any kind of diagnosis, because there's a significant minority also who have no problem with their voices. They may never even tell people that they hear voices, but the voices are positive and they don't impact on their life. So
right.
it's worth remembering that voice hearing is not synonymous with psychopathology. Exactly.
Yeah.
It is not always linked to a diagnosis of one kind or another.
And when I said, as I was saying to Seán and yourself, and I suppose we all tend to do this, oh yeah, you know, I have a voice that'll say, oh, don't be so stupid, or why did you do that, or that's not actually what you're talking about here.
No, I mean, we all have our inner voice. So I suppose we're down to a distinction between the difference between, if you want to call people who hear voices in a different way. Like that. Now, you know, I suppose there's a long history of this. I mean, let's think about 300 years ago. If you heard voices and said that it was God, then you were pretty exalted. It was a great thing, and you were held up as someone who was very holy.
Ended up a saint.
Absolutely. Yeah. But if you at that time said you heard the devil, then that may have been problematic for you at the time, to say the very least. But so throughout history, there's always been voice hearing. But I suppose with the development of psychiatry a little over 100 years ago, and that medically based approach, that approach would have been based, I suppose, on more a medical model and a biological model in terms of how voice hearing develops, what the causes of it are, and what the treatment should be.
Okay.
So, you know, our group is very much not about that, but I suppose I can explain that a little bit better later on. You know?
Seán, thanks a million for coming in, as I said, to talk to us about your experience. Will you tell us what you're 36, by the way, and I was just saying a very fresh looking 36. Yeah, you look more like 26. But anyway, Seán, tell us about your experience, and when did it start, and what is it like?
It's absolutely a nightmare to start off with. When it started off 4 years ago, and they were all negative voices, so they were all very critical and very they were like real people talking to you, like you and me now. Yeah. And so you'd be 1 minute in your house, the next minute you hear people shouting on the road about you, and you'd be terrified to think that there's actually people saying that. At first I didn't believe it. I thought it was just my imagination, and as time went by, they got worse. So my parents and my family were very concerned about me, and I decided to go into the GP to talk to him about what I should do about this, and told him the whole circumstances. And he told me to go into hospital to get it checked out. And I went into hospital to get it checked out, and they diagnosed me with mild schizophrenia, and which was a relief to me, because I thought I had a brain tumour or something going on, you know, because some people that have medical problems hear voice. But it was very challenging for me, actually. Even in hospital, when I started taking the medication, the voice didn't go away. They were taunting me outside, still saying that, oh, he's in hospital now, we got him, and all this sort of thing. So,
oh God, how terrifying!
Yeah, so I to get over that part, I just had to keep taking my medication and talking to the nurses there, which were brilliant to me in the hospital.
And have those voices stopped now, Seán?
They have decreased. I'm dealing with a counsellor now, and he's helped me to get over the stage of understanding what they're actually saying, because when they're negative, they can be positive as well. So you can't block them out completely. You have to listen to them and give them time, but you don't have to take what they're saying to you.
Really?
Yeah.
God, that's extraordinary. And what? So you were there. 4 years ago. You were in your early 30s, and suddenly this started. Can you remember the first time it happened, Seán, and what your reaction was?
I can remember it was just overwhelming. I was sitting in my house, and just out in the street, someone tapped the window really hard.
Yeah.
And they can make noise. They can threaten you with noise, and they can also threaten you with illusions, thinking that there is actually someone in the car. Like if there was someone outside your house in a car, you look out the window just for a few minutes, and they were looking in. The voice would play a part in that and saying that they're actually talking about you. So you wouldn't know if the person in the car was talking about you or not.
Yeah, and they would be saying pretty awful things about you.
Yeah. So
I can't imagine how you'd cope with that, Seán. But obviously, you kind of did the right things instinctively. You were you upset? Did you tell somebody straight away? Or
I told my father kind of about it. And he said to me, "There's nothing, don't be daft, that's only
you're imagining it." Yeah.
But after a while, he got very concerned, because I was looking around a lot when I was at home, because the sounds are coming through the wall as well.
Yeah.
In the house, like if there were people outside, so I was saying, "There's something not right about that."
And for you, this was completely real.
Yes, real, because I have real people that I know. Or people I didn't know. So I was thinking that they were talking about me, and I was concerned for my own safety. So
Yeah. And when did it get actually worse? What was the worst point in it? And have you kind of gone past that now that you obviously have a kind of an understanding of what's going on, Seán?
Yes.
How bad did it get for you?
It got to a point where I got very depressed and got down. So I had a second episode there a while ago, and that was very bad. The voices were very loud and very strong and controlling.
Yeah.
So they kind of tricked me into thinking things were going to happen and scare you. So I used to kind of get around that by listening to them and not reacting what they actually want me to do. So that annoyed them, and then they'd kind of walk off. So
you don't try to deny that it's happening, in other words.
Yeah.
It's happening, but you cope with it. What an extraordinary and Seán, I think, just describes it.
Very well.
Extraordinarily lucidly.
Absolutely.
Charles, and this is a very real thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, Seán is great at describing it, because he talks about a lot because he's an expert.
Of course.
An expert by experience. He actually informs, he speaks to a lot of what's going on in the research at the moment. So, the traditional approach would really have been to from the medical side, would have been to medicate and deny, because there was sort of a belief that to engage with the voices would maybe be to give them substance. And that could be damaging. So it was to medicate and deny. But, so 20 years ago, there was a Dutch professor called Marius Rom and his research partner, Dr. Sandra Escher. They had a lady in their clinic, and they said, "Okay, you're hearing voices. We're going to give you some antipsychotics, and that should dampen them," because they knew that beta blocker receptors, like second generation antipsychotic drugs that work on dopamine receptors, would dampen down the voices. Now, for very few patients did they make the voices disappear, but they went down the first line of treatment, which was to medicate and deny the voices. But this lady said no, that she wasn't going to do that. She said, the voices, what they're saying to me, the content is relevant to my life. It's relevant to my experience, and I think that the voices are trying to tell me things. So they were a bit puzzled, but they listened, and she insisted they did. And actually, after a while, they came around to understanding that, hang on, for some voice hearers, they seem to think, for many voice hearers, that the content of what the voices say is important, and to deny their existence, first of all, can be problematic.
Yeah.
And also to medicate can be problematic
distressing
too.
To try and kind of...
Well, it's like telling somebody
people
that what they're seeing isn't there.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's just a conflict that's very
and
difficult
so
to deal
what
with.
is the voice? And I come to Seán as well, because you've obviously come to understand it doesn't stop the voices in your head, but if you understand what's going on.
So, yes. So
what is the voice? Is it your own brain? Or?
The simple answer is nobody knows exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody knows exactly. There's some neurological evidence around brain volume, around cortical folding, in certain areas of the brain that are associated with auditory cognition, but also with language. There's two areas of the brain, Wernicke's area and the Broca's areas, and they're to do with understanding language. And there is some neurological evidence.
So it could be a physical thing.
So there is evidence around a physical biological component, but that's not the whole story, because there is also strong evidence to link early trauma with voice hearing experiences. So you've got a biological, you've got a social aspect, and then you've also got a psychological aspect, because believing in the voices and the strength of belief in the voices also leads directly to the level of distress, which in turn leads to a need for care.
Right.
So looking at only one component of the overall picture is not going to tell us what we need to do to help people.
Yeah.
But basically what our group is formed on is the belief that the experience is there in the voice hearers, and that they can, through a peer support model, they can help one another. It's the same. It's not new. I mean, GROW have been doing it. AA have been doing it for years. Peer support has benefits that work outside of lots of different areas.
Seán, has that helped for you? You obviously have sort of quite an understanding of it, but it doesn't make the voices go away. They'll still be there in your head.
They'll be still there.
Yeah.
When if I don't learn to accept them, number one, you have to accept them. If you don't accept them, it's difficult to move on.
And how have you been getting on in the group? I mean, you came forward to your GP in turn said you need to get this checked out. You got it checked out. They diagnosed you with a mild form of schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But how has your whole kind of engagement with doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists, and now with this group, how's it worked out for you?
It's very beneficial to me, because it's always important to get a second opinion as well for yourself.
Yeah.
To, get your mind at ease and make you accept that you hear the voices and all that sort of thing. But the psychologists in the hospital were good, but I didn't see many of them when I was there at the time, because for other reasons. But I saw the nurses, which were great. They give great support, because they have a better understanding. They're dealing with the patients day to day and all that kind of thing. So.
And you've talked to lots of people now who hear voices.
Well, I have contact. I was with a group in Dublin, and I did get in contact with voice hearers there in the group when I was.
Voice hearers is the name of the group and the name of the condition as well.
Yeah. I mean, the group that Seán is talking about is the same as our group. It's based on the Hearing Voices movement approach, where voice hearers are the experts, and they get together to talk about their experiences in a safe place. And that's all we do as facilitators, because our group is not a therapy group. We just create a safe space for voice hearers to share their experiences with one another and to support one another.
Hugely important.
It's 20 years old now, and voice hearer groups are across 26 countries across the world. They're spread out. They're sprouting up all over Ireland, in Cork, in Dublin, in Limerick. I mean, the model itself is not new, but the approach to apply apply it to a voice hearing voice hearing approach is new.
Seán, before we leave you, you mentioned that sometimes these voices, which are very real to you, that they say positive things to you.
Yeah.
As well.
Well, it means like they can say, you can do it, you're doing great, just keep going as you're going on, and you'll be grand. This sort of stuff to me all the time when I'm doing things good. Really? Which is great to hear, but it's also can be frightening to hear when you don't want to hear them saying it to you, but I get over that by just accepting them.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think that's really worth pointing out as well, that Seán's experience is not just negative voices. There are positive voices that he supports, and I suppose, ultimately the aim of the group is to help voice hearers, to help them get together so that they can help each other to change the nature of their relationship with the voices. The voices are not, the group is not about making voices go away. It's about understanding the content, the metaphorical content, so that they can make sense of maybe something that happened in the past. Because if you think about it, I mean, voice hearing to early childhood trauma, isn't that just really a very normal response to circumstances that are not normal? It manifests in different ways, but it's, if you put it more in less of a schizophrenic type model and place it in something like a dissociative model, where the old style multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder. If you look at it that way, where a person kind of splits to cope with some trauma, then the voice hearing starts to make a bit more sense. So
Seán, did you want to say something there?
I also want to say that I'm also living a very positive life now. I'm working and I'm self-employed in my own business, and everything is working out much better for me now, but I'm in the recovery stage, so
brilliant.
So it's through the group and through the counsellor and seeing the doctors and the outpatients that I'm actually able to do these things.
Well, I think you're a bit of a star, if I may be an added voice there, Seán. I think you're great for coming on the radio, and I'm sure, I always know with these kind of situations where people are talking maybe for the first time on radio and people haven't heard somebody describing what you've described, it helps people enormously, because I know there are going to be other people out there, you can be sure, who've been really helped by what you've had to say today, Seán, and it's a real pleasure to meet you. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Can I just mention how people could maybe get in touch with the group? Very much, So if people want to find out more about the group or would like to know when and where we meet, they can send us an email at hearingvoiceskilkenny@gmail.com. That's all one word, hearingvoiceskilkenny@gmail.com. We also have a Google group. It's the Kilkenny Hearing Voices group. So if you search for that, that should be there. So please do send us an email if you'd like to get in touch. And if anybody wants some more information about this type of approach, which I want to actually stress as well, is an approach that can help along with other approaches, including medication, including psychiatric approaches and other approaches. It's part of a suite of solutions, but they can go to intervoiceonline.org, www.intervoiceonline.org,